Erik the Red was a Norwegian-born explorer who is credited with founding the first permanent European settlement in Greenland around 985 AD. Born around 950 AD in Norway, Erik's family was exiled to Iceland when he was a child after his father was accused of manslaughter. Erik grew up in Iceland and earned his nickname the Red due to his red hair and beard as well as his fiery temper. In 982 AD, Erik was banished from Iceland for 3 years after killing 2 men in a dispute. During his exile, he explored the island now known as Greenland and spent 2 years mapping its coastlines. Upon returning to Iceland, he gave the island its name Greenland to attract settlers, and in 985 AD he led an expedition of around 500 people to establish the first Norse settlements there. Erik established 2 main settlements in Greenland: the eastern settlement, Eystrabygd, and the western settlement, Vestrabygd. He lived at the estate of Brattahlid in the eastern settlement and served as the paramount chieftain of the Greenland colonies. His son Leif Erikson is believed to be the first European to reach North America around the year 1000 AD. The Greenland colonies lasted for around 500 years before mysteriously dying out, likely due to factors like climate change, lack of resources, and isolation from Europe. Erik the Red's journey and colonization of Greenland marked an important chapter in Norse exploration and settlement of the North Atlantic region. Eystrabygd, also known as the Eastern Settlement, was one of the 2 main Norse settlements established in Greenland during the Viking Age, around 985 AD. It was located in southwestern Greenland on the island's east coast, while the other major settlement, Vestrabygd, the Western Settlement, was situated on the west coast. The ruins of the Falsi Church, one of the best preserved Norse ruins in Greenland, are remnants of the Eystrabygd settlement. Burials have been found under the walls of this church, indicating it was part of the Eastern Settlement. So in summary, Eystrabygd was the name given to the Eastern Norse settlement established in southwestern Greenland around 985 AD during the Viking exploration and colonization of the island. Its location was on the east coast of Greenland, while the other major Viking settlement, Vestrabygd, was on the west coast. Vestrabygd and Eystrabygd were inhabited for nearly 5 centuries by Norse colonists from Scandinavia, primarily from Iceland and Norway. The Norse literary sources, such as the historical works of Snorri Sturluson, provide some information about the existence and history of these Viking settlements in Greenland, including Vestrabygd. Archaeological evidence, such as remnants of boats and stone structures, have been found at the sites of these former Norse colonies, shedding light on the lives of the inhabitants of Vestrabygd and Eystrabygd. The people who lived in Vestrabygd were Norse Viking colonists and settlers, mainly from Iceland and Norway, who established and inhabited this remote outpost in Greenland for several centuries during the Viking Age and medieval period. Life for the Norse Vikings in Greenland during the Viking Age was challenging and required adaptation to the harsh Arctic environment. The Norse settlements in Greenland lasted from the late 10th century to the 15th century CE. The Norse settlers arrived in Greenland in the late 980s CE and established 2 main settlements: the Eastern Settlement in the south and the Western Settlement further north. At their peak, the combined population of the settlements was estimated to be between 2,000 and 10,000 people. To survive in Greenland's unforgiving climate, the Norse combined livestock farming with hunting of seals, caribou, walruses, narwhals, and even polar bears. They imported essentials like grains, iron, and wine, using walrus ivory as currency to trade with Europe. The growing season was very short, so the Norse had to adapt their farming practices, with the earliest settlers struggling but later generations learning to better manage the land. Despite the challenges, the Norse settlers managed to carve out a living for themselves in Greenland for over 400 years. They built churches and farms and established a stable social structure. However, by the 15th century, the Eastern Settlement had become defunct, and the last known records of the Norse in Greenland date to the 1540s. The reasons for their eventual disappearance are not entirely clear, but a combination of factors likely played a role, including climate change, the collapse of the walrus ivory trade, and the devastating impact of the Black Death in Europe, which was Greenland's lifeline to the outside world. The Norse settlers in Greenland encountered the native Inuit tribes, known as the Thule people, in the 13th century. The Thule had migrated from Alaska and settled in Greenland, displacing the earlier Dorset culture inhabitants. The relationship between the Norse and Thule was often hostile. The Thule attacked the Norse settlements, killing many inhabitants. By the 15th century, the Norse colonies had disappeared, likely due to a combination of factors including climate change, loss of contact with Norway, and conflicts with the Thule. Investigations of Norse graves in Greenland have shown that in the later days of the Norse colony, the people had degenerated physically due to the effects of the harsh climate and limited diet, lacking cereals. This may have made them more vulnerable to attacks by the Thule. The encounter between the Norse and Thule in Greenland was part of a larger pattern of interaction between the Norse and native tribes in North America. The Norse reached Newfoundland and possibly other parts of eastern Canada, but did not establish lasting settlements due to conflicts with the indigenous peoples. Archaeologists have found no evidence of a sudden, violent end to the Norse colonies. Rather, it seems they gradually dwindled away, the last settlers perhaps merging with the Thule or returning to Iceland and Norway. The fate of the Norse in Greenland remains one of history's great mysteries. Their encounter with the Thule was a brief moment of contact between two vastly different cultures, one that ended in the disappearance of the Norse from the Arctic stage. But the legacy of the Norse in Greenland lives on in the sagas, in the ruins of their settlements, and in the DNA of the Inuit people who are the descendants of the Thule. The story of the Norse in Greenland is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of a harsh and unforgiving environment.